Do you live at this house?
I've stayed here now for a year with my parents following what happened.
Hmm.
I was gonna get, well, minus like a month that I left, but I was gonna leave pretty soon. I was gonna leave like yesterday, but I ended up staying maybe another week or something because I hadn't seen my parents in a long time. Byron was actually saying, um, he's got the almost famous things there. Might not. So Byron was actually saying, like in a previous interview, in one of the Dr. K interviews, that because I wrote to him that it was just one thought I had, but he took mostly that one. I was saying that I left, like I don't think I said it that way, but maybe he interpreted it that way. That I left because I felt like I was his dad and not his brother or something like that. And I left because I wanted to go travel the world. And actually I was saying in a way like, well, I felt like he didn't abandon me, but he was always playing his game, and no one could really talk to him too much because he was busy in game life, and maybe we didn't connect always to like what he was feeling because maybe he didn't want to open up about certain things always. And and sometimes we'd argue and sometimes not. We had a lot of nice moments together, and we would watch anime, and he would tell me about how he's feeling sometimes. But I think that part was more closed off, like feeling, because he was saying actually with Dr. K how um, if someone was depressed, he can connect to them, but then they both got depressed, and then if someone was happy, then he couldn't connect as much, but then so he couldn't connect as much. But also, we had a different conversation. It just reminds me, I just want to say it, that we had this conversation where I was telling him I also sometimes feel self-conscious and stuff and whatever, and I'm not, everyone sometimes feels like that. And I think that Dr. K could have done more to sort of normalize that, because they talked so much about, and some of the stuff was good about meditation and things like that and calming the mind. But I feel like out of, what is it, more than 10 hours that, I rewatched all of them. And out of that, like, there could have been some basic things that he could have suggested to him too. And the lack of saying those things, and, and, and saying other things could have led to some issues. Like, he could have said, "Oh, well, it's normal. So you're over." I think one of the things, I mean, looking back, one of the things that I think Byron had trouble with is that he thought that his experiences were not normal, and then he got more. It just like it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. He got more, you know,
Distant.
more upset about them, or
Right.
more sad about them, and I think he could have mentioned some of that more. And I don't know. I had a bunch of notes which are on the
Yeah.
phone that's recording now. Anyway, we can sort of. I could just talk a little bit, but and you could probably help make it more formal, if because you probably read what I said, and maybe you have
I
some
can
notes.
open up your notes right now, and we could just go through them one by one if you want.
If that's a good format, or maybe, I mean, last time you had 10 questions, but and we
Yeah.
sort of covered them, but it was probably like, maybe you want to just list what those were, or if you have
Sure.
some new list, we could just list it out, so then we can, even if we don't cover it that way, it's just something good to. Do you think that that's good?
Uh.
Because last time we had a very free flow conversation. We could do it too
Yeah.
this time, but also to have those concepts in mind in the back of my head, so that we kind of get to
So
them.
what I could do? Oh yeah, I'll read you the questions that I wrote last time. I didn't write anything this time. But I'll read you the questions I had last time. So the questions were, and I'm just gonna go through all of them first before you want an answer or anything. But it was,
Okay.
do you think Dr. K helped Byron at all? And if so, how do you think he helped? Do you think Dr. K made things worse for Byron at all? If so, how did he make things worse? What role do you feel Dr. K, being a trained psychiatrist, played in his interactions with Byron? Did he ever reach out to you or your family to offer help, which we obviously talked about last time? Do your parents know about him? What do they think? Did their opinions change over time? Did your opinions change over time? In general, do you think it's irresponsible to broadcast conversations like the ones he had with Byron? Do you think Dr. K is genuine, or is he only in it for success? Do you think he does any good at all with his actions in a general sense? What would you like to see change in regards to Dr. K's online behavior in the future? What are the main points people need to be focusing on in the discussion around Dr. K and ethics? And yeah, and that's the last one. The last question I have is there anything else? So yeah.
Can you read the last three again?
So the last three were, I'll read the last four since they seem to be
Okay, connect.
So it's, do you think Dr. K is genuine, or is he only in it for the success? Do you think that he does any good at all with his actions in general? What would you like to see change in regards to Dr. K's online behavior in the future? And what are the main points people need to be focusing on in the discussion around Dr. K and ethics?
Yeah, I haven't seen Dr. K's other sessions so much. I rewatched. Now maybe I'll have to watch that tonight and maybe get back to you tomorrow. It's a very important point. Had I known, of course, I didn't think to ask you what the questions were. Then I've looked into that because it's very important. And okay, so I don't think he's in it just for the success necessarily. I mean, people want to succeed, and I think he's not like anti-profit, anti-money, and a lot of people that are into Hinduism aren't. And I was just recently listening to kind of a Hindu like guru kind of guy. What's his name? Dad. Oh, I forget his name. There was a talk. He has like 3 lines, white lines over his, and it has a lot of interesting, basic wisdom for life. Like life doesn't come with a manual, and some other religions don't make it their focus, or maybe they do, but it doesn't get popularized or pushed by the YouTube, Google algorithms as much for whatever reason. So like basic sort of, because there are actually like, I don't necessarily like everything I hear from that Joel Osteen. I'm not even Christian, I'm Jewish, but some of the stuff is pretty good. I've seen stuff about breaking bad habits and filling your mind with, let's say you have 100% time in your mind. If you fill it with doubt and worry and anger and so on over your own actions, you don't have room left for positivity and all these things. I mean, basic concepts that are helpful to life, but you don't see that pushed as much. I don't know how I got, for example, to the Hindu stuff. And while I like a lot of what Dr. K was saying, but I think like I wanted to say that Dharma is a cool concept you come up with. Let's say some life purpose, which maybe some of this has also helped me. Well, focus, what I would like my message to be, or how I can help. But there are certain negatives too, because I guess, I mean, in India, for example, you have the stratification of culture into caste system, and maybe Dharma plays part of that too. So people think, oh, it's that it's used as a justification to keep a caste system. Anyway, I just wanted to say that because in a way it's kind of like because Dr. K is kind of like, one of the bad things I think is he's there to sort of evangelize or whatever Hinduism, in a way, because he's talking because a lot of the things he's suggesting, and with the meditation and so on, and he's kind of leading to that. So while that's not necessarily bad in itself, I think that he should also, if he's going to say that, then he should also be more balanced about some of the negatives that it can cause. Okay, but that's a little bit farther out there. Let me sort of restart. I think that he's not, so I think that Dr. K, about whether or not he is doing it for the money or not, or success, I think he doesn't seem anti-profit at all. I mean, he likes growing his channel, and I'm sure he enjoys wealth too. And just to summarize from the previous point I'd made, that's not very frowned upon by other Hindu leaders. Like I've seen one Dank Park or something like that. I think Dhamma Park or something like that. And he's saying, oh, it's not bad to be, materially wealthy. Then I can help others more and so on. and that could be looked at as more of a scam, let's say, or okay, that's legitimate, or there's nothing wrong with he said, even as spiritual leader, nothing wrong with having a Ferrari. You don't need like 14 of them. Okay, a Ferrari, it's a little bit extreme. You can, it's well, it's a little different than say some kinds of priests or whatever. You know, it'd look a little weird if the rabbi's driving a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Although, of course, it happens that, you know, I've been to some spiritual leaders that are like, they've said there are all kinds, but that's generally thought of as a little bit weird to say. Although I understand the concept and I'm not against it, but I'm just saying that there is the door open to, he could be interested in being a monk and so on, that he was there for 10 years or 7 years, you know, Dr. K, but he's still very much motivated for profit, like a lot of people are. Okay, so he's not anti-profit. I think that has no
Yeah.
indication of that. And okay, so moving on, and I think I don't know. He seems to. This is a very minor thing, but I tell his teeth are extremely white, and I guess he's done his teeth. I also thought of doing my teeth, and it's a really minor thing, but it's kind of like it's kind of surface level. I mean, it's very shallow in a way, right? I mean, I also thought to do it, but for us, like maybe it helps
I mean, it's
people
possible
connect.
that he just like took really good care of his teeth or something, right?
Could be,
Yeah.
could be. Yeah, it's a minor point. It just, they really glow or something like that. And I
Yeah.
think Byron was even saying when he was smiling and he was telling him, "Is this a real smile or is this a real smile?"
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
I think Byron was thinking that it looks fake either way, and he didn't say it that way. But anyway, no, it's nice. Maybe it's good to, it helps people smile more, and that's helpful. And smiling is contagious because then mirror neurons and so on. Anyway, back to, so he's, I don't think that about whether Dr. K is in it for the money or not. I think he's definitely not anti-profit, and he's probably for, let's say, success and so on, and growth and profit.
Yeah.
But does it hinder his ability to help people? Does it make him go the wrong direction? Okay, I don't. It could be that he has sort of the wrong influences, but that becomes a discussion of whether what he's doing is helpful or not, and if he's changing it to be less helpful because he's profit driven. Um, I'm not so sure about that, because I think he kind of believes in what he's saying more or less. Maybe he tapers it, maybe changes a little bit to be like a little bit more with the times, but I think he believes in some of what he's saying. But that's actually maybe the problem too, is because he believes in what he's saying. It's not all scientific, and he says that, but yet he's not focusing on very important things that are scientific, like isolation. But he barely touched on isolation. He said in the last one of the last notes I gave you, he said, "Oh yeah, what causes suicide?" And it's like one of the things like isolation. He didn't actually discuss that. He just went on to say something about particle physics, and well, that's very interesting and so on. But what about, you know? So I think, not to jump to a later point. Well, I'll just mention it. One thing that I like him to see him do is direct people to something that's against isolation, because that's what happened to Byron, not only normally even before lockdowns, but especially during lockdowns, when
Yeah.
it's like
I was gonna say
solitary
the same
confinement.
thing. Like, it would have been extremely relevant considering what just
The
happened.
lockdowns.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. Extremely relevant. So it's like in jail, when people want to give you the worst punishment they can, they put you in solitary confinement, and it's isolation. And like Byron was saying, it's normal, it's evolution. People want to be together with other people because it feels healthier and so on. It's like the brain gives you a signal: go find people. This is dangerous. This is bad. You need people, procreation, and for your survival, and so on. And so he could have been focusing on a little about that. Okay, let's see what you can do about finding people that are into what you're doing, like basic stuff, right? And he didn't do that. And he led him to this meditation. I'm all for a breathing exercise and feeling calm, and I do them myself, and I enjoyed some of doing what Dr. K's talking about. But if you're alone in your house all day long, I mean, it's very sure some monks do it, like, and it's some people I know that were into this stuff, and they went on their own, like this isolation thing, for a day or a week. They're like, it was really hard on me, and it was like they didn't really like it. I mean, they don't put it in such they don't say like I was bad, because they're almost like against doing that. But the way they're phrasing it, it was
Oh.
they're like screaming it was bad, it was bad, it was horrible, and or maybe a month or on your own without anybody. And personally, I can sort of get along with being alone, but it's not for everyone. And Byron didn't enjoy it, and so Dr. K could have just led him to steps, like practical steps. He can meet people that feel like him, maybe local communities, and this is what I'd like him to focus on as far as being more in a positive direction. Is my friend, family friend of mine, my friend, it sounds like me, but hey, if it was me, it would be even more relevant. But it's a friend of mine, a family friend. I didn't know he had depression. His brother had depression for decades, and I know him very well. And he said it saved him, this DBSA, Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. And he met with them locally, I guess, in New York. And he says it saved him. I didn't get too much into it, but I can see, you come together with people that feel like you, and it doesn't have this patriarchal or matriarchal powers thing where with your the power dynamics are different with your therapist, and so they could be healthier in a group, and it's longer lasting, and it's free, and you have these, because it's a nonprofit, and you have these people that are, and it's free, free local sessions. You have these people that feel like you, and then you can even make friends like that and support each other. So I wish he would have done more of that, and I think that could have been more helpful.
Like practical, non-spiritual solutions, basically.
Boom, there you go. Exactly. So he was, when you put it that way, he was like evangelized. He has an agenda, whether it's just profit driven or not. He's obviously wants you to get into this meditation and this sort of, and later on this a little bit, there's hints like, who knows what he talked to him in private, basically, by the way. My mom pointed that out. I said, I'm going to have the interview with Slush, and I told her about you, and we all loved your previous documentary, by the way, and thank you for that. And she just, first thing that came to mind, she's very quiet these days, but first thing that came to mind was, what did he talk to him about in private? Because I said, Dr. K, he's okay in a way, and so on. A lot of the stuff was okay, and there were a few problematic spots, like how he said, this is jumping the topic a little, but he said he was talking about reincarnation to a person that's suicidal.
Yeah.
Like the person's suicidal, and you're telling them, oh, by the way, there's a reroll, maybe you can kill yourself, and you'll end up in a new life.
Irresponsible. I can't get over it. That's like the worst one of all the things that he said in all the conversations. Like, I can't understand how he thought it was okay to say that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I understand what he meant, but he said like, oh, you can die after you make the game. Again, because of its religious beliefs, because Dharma, because his life purpose, according to Dr. K, was to make this game. So he can die after that. And what happens if the game doesn't work, by the way? Yeah. The game wasn't, he could have maybe raised more funds, by the way, but this is something, it wasn't public, but he had spent so much money on it. And he was like free, generally speaking, people are happy once they earn a certain amount, because they don't have financial problems anymore. They say that after $85K a year, or whatever it is in your area, you feel less. You could pay the bills, and you feel less stress, and you feel better.
Your essential needs are met.
Your essential needs are met. Now, Byron's not only his essential needs were met, but he was free to go travel, and I believe that gives you even additional happiness, because you can even. They should do a study maybe on this. It's not how much you earn. You can be a billionaire, but you're still not. Sometimes you're not as free, because you have all these stresses. When you have now it can be negative too, because if you're like trust fund baby and you don't feel any purpose or something like that, it can be a problem. But that wasn't Byron's case either. He was basically like self-made. We come from an upper middle class family. My dad was a lawyer, but we're not very wealthy or something like that. And we certainly not enough to pay for Byron to live the way he lived pretty well had this nice apartment stuff, and he worked really hard and everything, and he deserved it. And a lot of people loved him, and he was providing them with a place to be and feel and to connect and entertainment. And he was almost world champion and so on in the game and all that. But I'm saying it kind of, he had basically a certain level of comfort and freedom from his wealth. And then later on, this game was like he put so much money, I think, of his own into it. It's still not clear to me exactly what happened there. We're just complex doing all the taxes for him, and like what exactly? I just see like, okay, yeah, this, and then he had like nothing, like almost after that, and then he had gambled at the end to try to, I think, try to make up for it on the last day. And that didn't go out well too. This is also, and I think maybe he didn't want to talk about that. But anyhow, about the game, he still had funds, but it was really a lot. I'm going off on a tangent, but it really just to finalize it, just to finish it, it really put a lot of financial stress on him, I think, because all of a sudden, like, well, what am I gonna? I don't know. I'm not actually sure, because maybe it wasn't a problem for him because there were investors looking to help and stuff like that. But just everything together. I don't. Later on, maybe you'll edit in a more useful way.
No,
Sorry,
I
you
think
were
it's
gonna
fine.
say something.
No. I think that I think it's fine that you're going, that you take a little bit of a tangent to explain the context. I think it's relevant.
Yeah, so then there are a lot of things that came together, like COVID, the isolation, like like solitary confinement. You go outside, it's not confinement, you go outside, but there's no one there. It's like almost worse. You're like, it's not worse, but you feel like you're in this
Apocalypse.
like the apocalypse movie, right? And then it's just weird. It's like this disassociating feeling, like you're not, like life is not real anymore. Like, and it has a lasting psychological effect. You're like, are we alive? Is this like real reality? And people are like all closed off, and the masks, I guess, help and so on, or they don't, or they do, whatever it is, they do, I guess. But it just has this disassociative feeling, and now it had this lasting effect. Maybe you should cut that part off. I don't want to make it like about that, but definitely the isolation is a standard understood thing that is bad for you. So the isolation, the financial pressures from having all the, no care in the world almost. I mean, he wasn't a billionaire or even multimillionaire, I think, but just he had enough to just live well, comfortably, and be able to travel if he wanted. He can even have streams anywhere in the world. He can have streams. Although he did say his lifestyle was a little bit hard in a way that when he has to stream. So that was his job, is isolating, because you stream and the other streamers are streaming. And so it's hard to connect that way. But then again, a lot of people have. So the doctor, he could have been more practical, like getting a little back to the point.
Yeah.
He could have said, look, a lot of people have. Like he was just kept pushing to his agenda and stuff. But he could have just said, and I don't want to do the same.
I think
with,
that like, to play devil's advocate, I guess, from his Dr. K's perspective, I think that to him, the like meditation related advice that he was giving Byron, like, to him, he was like, this is practical because it deals with your direct experience, right?
I need to go check. So what does he have them do meditate? I guess that probably helps for anxiety. Yeah. I mean, maybe I saw some statistic about how women, or maybe some population has more anxiety, and then some population have. Okay, well, so like with anxiety, I think Dr. K was saying even anxiety can be bad, but it's not like bipolar disorder, and it's not like what is it, the borderline personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people suffer anxiety, like, I don't know, quarter, half of Americans, or a quarter of them.
Yeah.
And that's also, it's like, America, it's like a wealthy country, even if there aren't perfect social programs or are good. So either way, it's a wealthy country. And I guess, generally speaking, you say like, when you don't have, I think this was interesting. Byron was saying once, and he got a lot of crap for it, is like to be poor is like helpful or something like that. What he meant was there's a path to go forward. You know what you want, like objectively speaking, and then when a society gets pretty wealthy and they're not yet, they lose
like an existential
sight. Yeah, there you go. Existential crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that maybe that's a little bit what's happening in the U.S. is like your basic needs are met or something, and and some people during the lockdowns, they wanted to go back to work because they felt like, I don't know what to do with myself when they're not working. And I guess, not to bring up a whole thing, but I like the idea in a way of, let's say, universal basic income. And people would think, oh, well, people will start doing all kinds of creative stuff. But I'm not sure because, what we saw was a lot of people get really depressed, like they're not sure what to do with themselves. And someone that has a real drive, like a burning desire, as they say, for entrepreneurs to go do something, you can usually find the time to do it. Although I do say that, it's harder for sure. But anyway, the existential crisis, as you said, can weigh in. About Dr. K with the meditation. So maybe it helps some people with anxiety. It does. I mean, I like the meditation too, but like you said, with bipolar, and he should have known that. I mean, he's a trained psychiatrist, and so that, yeah, irresponsible. Not only the reincarnation stuff, like just talking about a suicidal person, and you can die when your dharma is fulfilled. Never mind. Okay, so I went off on the tangent of what if the game doesn't get fulfilled because maybe the financial pressures or whatever. What if it's going to fail? By the way, never mind. He didn't talk about that. Byron probably felt like, oh my God, I have this front face. Whereas like he was very open, but not so open about everything. Maybe like, I hired all these people. What if we don't? And you don't want to sound, and that's fine too, because you don't want to sound like your company is in bad shape. I'm not saying it was or wasn't. Haven't even gotten to that stage because the estate isn't even transferred yet. So even if we wanted to complete his vision, we couldn't do it yet because legally and this and that, which is another thing. It took the state lawyer a year to move. And until we got the court to like push her, then she wrote one page or like a page and a half summary. All she needed to do is like a year until, anyways. And meanwhile, we weren't able to, we wanted to help push Byron's vision forward with Everland. And someone wanted to take it on and do it. I wasn't going to be involved too much because I have my own things, and I don't want to like sort of ruin basically Everland with my own whatever it is I do, and I want to keep it like pure. But we couldn't do that because of the state lawyer wasn't progressing things. And anyway, I was getting on tangent again. So Dr. K could have talked about the pressure that he's feeling because of business. It's a lot of pressure. And I think, Tony Robbins has a nice line about it, whether you like him or not. He's great, I think, even if it could feel a little bit, well, I guess to people that are depressed, their pain body is, like they say in Power of Now, which I think is a pretty cool book. Last I heard it a long time ago. Your sort of pain body has its own ego, and it's like, pushes away anything that can help it. And so I think that maybe I don't agree. I don't even know. Maybe I don't agree with every tactic or something. A salesperson, let's say, like Tony Robbins has, but he has a good line. He says, like, business is a spiritual game. And it's hard, like you go through fire, like it's trials and tribulations, right? And you have people depending on you. And then you were like, successful or whatever, and then now and in trades too, and now you lost money and this and that, and that could be a lot of pressure. Dr. K doesn't think about any of that, and he just thinks that, you can meditate and it'll all go away, and that might be true. It can help, but not when you're in isolation for hours and hours, and he barely talked about that. He didn't direct him to anything that can help with that. And bringing it to other people, I got to go back and check, but I would assume that it's a similar situation. He should direct them to groups where like-minded people can discuss. Yeah. And that's it. And that's what I'd like him to do. I can't read into his mind. I can't say, oh, he's profit driven only. I don't think so. I think I don't know. It's not nice to say, and I can't do it anyhow. And I don't think it's even true, probably. Like, I mean, people go into what they go into because they have some reason that they feel that they have an advantage in the thing, like Dr. Hay has an advantage in, gaming and so on. But so maybe that's what it is. If you want to be cynical about it, like he felt he can do well in this business. But I think it's also like, oh, and I can help people. It kind of goes hand in hand. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But without reading into his mind, I think that he should at least take what we're saying here and bring some of the more practical stuff, and direct people to like groups like this DBSA for Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, or if it's about anxiety for something similar for anxiety. And I'd like him to help with, for example, a fundraiser to this nonprofit. I'm not connected to them except for my friend telling me it helped him. And they're trying to raise 100K. And I think Dr. K should try to get people to fundraise for DBSA in regards to Byron. That's what I would like to see. And for him to direct people with bipolar disorder and depression to a group like that. Doesn't have to be that group, another nonprofit, but that group seems good to me. And it's like local chapters. I like the concept. It's exactly against isolation in that sense. And it doesn't have that power dynamic where it's therapist and you, which I think Dr. K recognizes a problem too. But hey, I think he does. Okay, so I want to be positive too. And I really do think he does a good job in some sense if he directs it correctly. Now, in the past, what's his record? I don't know. Does he do a good job? I don't know. He's 0 for 1 as far as I'm concerned with my brother. How many suicidal people has he saved by streaming? I don't know. I didn't look into the record. How many DBS, bipolar people or borderline personality disorder did he save? I don't know. But I have a friend that these two brothers that have it pretty bad in their family, and he said his doctor saved him. Not only one brother said DBSA said, and another brother said his doctor saved him. The guy in UCLA, I forgot his name. But he said he never lost a patient. Okay, that's your track record. You never lost a patient, and Dr. K lost the patient. And by the way, they had. I guess they had. I don't know. I don't want to misquote, but my mom's saying that they had private sessions later. I don't really remember. I guess they
definitely talked off stream. I remember in the 5th conversation they had, Dr. K mentioned that they had like a discussion off stream where he said it was like a defining the relationship conversation. I don't know if you remember this, because it was like the previous conversation, he had said this whole thing about, I know, like, there's like a controversial study that bipolar disorder can be cured with a stable 2-year relationship, and I'm gonna be that 2-year relationship for you. Like, I don't know if you remember him saying that, Byron.
And yeah, that's right.
Kind of walks it back later, that conversation, and then the next conversation, he says that him and Byron talked off stream, and that like he acknowledged that he shouldn't have said that. It was irresponsible.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that just now.
That he defined their relationship and made sure that the Byron is on the same page, that this was not therapy. Of course, I bring this up in my script, not even just like a couple minutes after he says that, Byron says, right, not therapy. So it's like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, that says a lot about how effective the conversation really was in terms of altering Byron's perception of whether or not he was receiving therapy from Dr. K. So,
well, that's interesting. I wonder if off script that he was also not therapy. Do you think that was the implication, or just that on stream it's not therapy?
I think that from Byron's perspective, it's reasonable to believe that he was viewing all of it as therapy.
Oh, absolutely. And it was just like therapy. I've been in therapy, and that's
same.
Just like therapy, obviously. Yeah. And it was actually very active therapy. I mean, a lot of times in therapy, you can go to a psychiatrist and they'll just ask you questions, and you'll do most of the talking. And here it was like pretty active,
He was guiding him along quite a bit.
Yeah, guiding him along quite a bit, exactly. And I feel bad being a little bit sort of from a negative perspective, but maybe it's a good balance to how the community views it. And I really do like a lot of the things he's. I enjoy it because I don't really have deep mental challenges in terms of my emotional stability. I mean, I feel bad sometimes, or sometimes I feel very even I don't feel confident, or I don't feel whatever, like people don't all the time. Yeah, but and so I enjoy a little meditation here and there, But thinking about it as how it could have been, he could have said all these practical things and the cognitive behavioral stuff, like just basic stuff, and just to make him feel okay with. No, you're like overplaying it out. Like, this is normal. Like, people don't feel like, looking in the eyes, Byron said, like, I don't always feel. That's like they write books about that. Like, this is a common thing, and. So I think that Dr. K could be doing helpful work to some people with meditation and for anxiety and so on. But I think that he, for someone with, well, the track record is not good for his bipolar and depression treatment, because he lost Byron, and he was also meeting with him afterwards off off camera, and so he lost a patient as far as I'm concerned. And it is therapy as far as I'm concerned, 100%. I've been to therapy. It's exactly like therapy, or very much like therapy. I mean, it's exactly like therapy. They ask you questions to talk about things that are painful to you, and they explore and they lead you. And he was very active in leading Byron. So as far as I'm concerned, it is therapy on stream and also on off stream. But the on stream is obviously a legal problem for Dr. K. But I mean, that's a problem for Dr. K. But I'm just saying my opinion. And yes, it's definitely therapy, and he had sessions with him off chain. So as far as I'm concerned, he lost a patient, and who knows? I don't know how many else he's lost, but I know that a friend of mine that has really bad bipolar for years, he said he was saved and he's now 40, like my age, like in his 40s, and he was saved and by his good doctor, this guy in UCLA. I forgot his name. And another friend of mine, his brother, was saved by going to DBSA, which I would like Dr. K to, if I'm summarizing, I'd like Dr. K to point people to these kind of groups like DBSA's Depression, Bipolar, and Support Alliance. It's a nonprofit, and I haven't tried it, but my friend that said he saved him, he was in New York, and they have local chapters all around the country, and they're trying to form more, and they're very efficient, because I know nonprofits can be scams, basically, because, for example, or whatever, like however you want to view Scientology, it's a nonprofit as far as I remember. I had a friend once that was like 17 or 18 years old. He got taken to the sort of monastery there, and they pay them very poor. They lived in this terrible place, and while some of the people are, I guess, getting wealthy anyway. So a nonprofit you can see the salaries of the top 10%, but they can say, oh, the CEO is, or the organization leader is okay for him to be making $1 million a year. It's okay. But anyhow, that's not the case. So I looked into that with DBSA. I haven't looked into salaries, but I can see, I saw the output. And someone could do that, and you're welcome to do that. But I saw the output, and it only costs them $8,000 to run a whole chapter for an entire year, a whole location. So that's like $700 a month. I don't even know how they do it very efficiently. They have to train someone that has bipolar, or that has some kind of relatable mental issues, and they have to get the space and all that stuff, and they do all that for $700 a month, and it's free for people to go. So the proof is in the pudding, I guess. And it's helped my friend. They're very efficient with their numbers. And my friend came to me and said, to honor Byron, I'm getting a little off point about Dr. K here, but I think it's okay, because I want to be positive about what I think that. So I think he can direct people to this. And basically, my friends, came to me. He's trying to help them too, because it helped him. And they're trying to raise $100,000, 60,000, which is to create new chapters, like 3 new chapters, but and then additional content for young adults, and then another 40K to go to schools to reach people early, because they say that studies show that if you reach kids when they're between 10 and 14, it can help for a lifetime. Anyway, I said my thing about DBSA, so I'd like him to direct people to something like that, because it's a groups. It's not the power dynamic of a therapist. It's like your peers, and so it's not like this God is telling you how, has all the power in a way. And also, especially because Byron suffered from isolation, and this is anti-isolation. It's a group therapy. I did it again. I went off on this long tangent,
it's
man.
Fine. I think this is important to mention. So
okay, and let me get back to it. So I think that Dr. K didn't cover the isolation as much, because he said, oh, what are the things that cause depression? And he went through a bunch, and then he just said isolation, but then didn't say anything about it. He just said like something quantum physics or whatever. He didn't really talk about it after that. And that would be, meditating in your room is nice for reducing anxiety, and even for and this is another thing. He was often pushing sort of a religious spiritual agenda, which is fine, but not when you're like, you have to be responsible. So I think it was irresponsible for him to say to someone who's suicidal that you go, about reincarnation. We talked about it, and that he can die after he fulfills his sort of need, like goal is like a dharma, which is like his purpose in life from the Hindu perspective. Yet dharma can also create the caste system or support this caste system in India, which means that people are basically enslaved into certain kinds of like lower, there's like you're lower and you can never be higher because you're born into it. So like people are always I'm not even Christian, but they're all like anti-Christian or anti whatever. And then because of the because of the culture we're in the US, which is has legitimate concerns, but then they look to, let's say, Hinduism, which is fine. It has a lot of great things, but don't pretend like it's like some miracle drug, and it doesn't cause any bad. There's no downsides or something, and you're ignoring normal, like kind of practical solutions. Like, hey, you're not actually as messed up, Byron, as you say. It's normal to feel not confident sometimes. It's normal to be in thought loops. Why don't you work on the thought loops? You can with meditation, but you can also just, for example, Byron was always like, oh, and I'm sorry about this and I'm sorry about that. And it's like, you don't need to be as sorry about anything. You're like, it's your stream and you're just not maybe helping yourself with the time that we have. Just don't be sorry. Don't do it. Don't, like, and I know, and Americans can be really polite, almost to a fault, and they're like sorry and sorry and sorry, and like it's good to apologize if you made a mistake to somebody and it really hurt them and it's really your fault. But I mean, it's like you're bumping, oh, sorry, it's like you're falling over yourself saying sorry, literally in this thought loop. And it's just, I mean, it could have been working on just basic stuff like that, and so and instead of some of that, just over and over again. Oh, and I will say another thing, with the what was it? There's something he was pushing with the religious stuff. Oh, he was saying that, oh, Byron, you never feel like good about yourself. Like, what do you mean? It's like a strawberry, And then instead of giving him the strawberry at the end, he said like, oh, you're feeling nothing. When you're meditating, you feel like nothing. I mean, you're not nothing, but like your consciousness, you're separated from your mental, from the mind, and so the consciousness is like the thing underneath, the quiet peace. And I understand it's peaceful, and I get it. But it's not like the strawberry, like, oh wow, like he didn't present that, and he didn't say like that's it, that's what I meant. Although maybe it's clear enough. But what I'm getting at also is, I think he was trying to later on lead Byron to, if you really want to feel that strawberry, like you have to have some spiritual purpose, like AKA over here in this, Hindu things, because that's just step one, is to separate your mind from your consciousness. Step two is to have this dharma and you like believe and you're helping and so on. And that's fine. That a lot of people are born again Christians too, and they have a purpose after that, and they're able to not be crackheads anymore and stuff like that, like the My Pillow guy supposedly. But it is what it is. It's replacing the void with like a religion, and sort of now people don't have religion. They don't believe so much. I'm not super religious necessarily in the traditional way either, but because they're left with a void, they believe in all kinds of stuff. Some people
Right.
say, I believe in the science, but they actually don't know. They just believe in the television. Actually, they believe in what authorities say, and that's not science. I mean, Galileo, the father of science, says 1,000 people. You don't believe in the authority the authority of 1,000. Basically experts doesn't mean anything compared to the humble reason of one man or one person. And Einstein didn't need a consensus. Newton didn't need a consensus. It's one paper. Consensus is a political tool. It's not a scientific tool. You either prove something or you don't. And if the data goes against you, then it's wrong. I mean, I'm not an expert on the field, but I know, just for example, there's certain things, I won't say what, because I don't want to make it like political or too much or something, but people believe in all kinds of stuff that there's lots of counter data for. So whatever the data is for it is, there's counter data for it. So the theory is wrong.
I would say that most people believe in some interpretation of things as fact, when in reality it's just like they have some interpretation of a situation or whatever it is, and that, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Like, okay, there's this astrophysicist. He's an Israeli guy, very well-respected astrophysicist, and there's many other scientists that say it too. But then after they say it, they become less renowned. So his name is Nir Shaviv, and he points out, listen, they showed that Al Gore movie with the CO2, and CO2 is following temperature. It's not the other way. It's not that temperature. It's not that CO2 is causing the temperature. The temperature is causing the CO2 change, and we know why that happens because of ocean sequestration of CO2. When it gets cold, the ocean sequesters the CO2. It sucks in the CO2. So when it gets warm, it releases the CO2. So we even know the mechanism, why CO2 follows temperature. And he says in the longer history of Earth, for 500 million years, it has a tenfold variation, he says, of CO2 has not caused it has no, he said, no correlation whatsoever with temperature, but yet it's used as a sort of state religion because it replaces the religion, and it's like people believe it. And this, by the way, this concept is as old as the biblical flood story, which is funny. People have been blaming people for be good people, or a flood will come and kill you all. I mean, it's primal fear, right? Flood and burning, and they burned witches. Sorry, they burned witches at the stake because of bad weather. They've done that for hundreds of years. Like, it's your fault, the bad weather. And it's like religious. And the Aztecs used to take people's hearts out because they were fear if they didn't, then the sun wouldn't return. And the Epic of Gilgamesh, before the flood story, had the flood story before it. So it's very primal. Maybe there was some flood, but I don't know. It's so old that it's like the Epic of Gilgamesh, 5,000 years old. And it's used. It can be used as a religion because people don't know the science. They just trust authority, literally, and that's not science. Consensus isn't science. And when there's data to show that the science is against you, like 500 million years of tenfold variation in CO2 not causing temperature, then your theory is wrong. That's it. You don't need to talk about cloud formations and this and that. That's on other points. I don't want to get too much. I did. I wanted to get it off my chest, but I'm saying it's very, people don't look into it, when you've had a lot of time researching stuff and you get a little bit older like I am, and you have time to read stuff, then yeah, it's just I used to think like the way people think 20 years ago, and then after 20 years you change your mind a little bit.
I mean, I should hope that people change their mind a little bit. I think that not everyone gets there.
It does.
Yeah.
Anyway, to get back to more relevant, you might click that on or not. I don't know.
That probably won't go in the video.
Okay. So good. So we can. I mean, I don't mind, but it's not top.
I'll probably leave it in the interview video that'll be uploaded separately.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Because I mean,
it's a good point to get across for people, even though it's not related to.
That's why I don't want to connect it. But the thing is, in my mind, it is connected because the lockdowns. Why did we have lockdowns? It was a bluff. I mean, in my mind, because Florida didn't have lockdowns. They didn't die. Where did people die? In New York City, where Cuomo put people. He's a mass murderer, as far as I'm concerned. It can't be, or it's such negligence. The worst thing you could possibly do is put people in the old age home, right? That's like putting a nuclear bomb in, and that's what he did. And he's fine, right? And 3 other governors in blue states did the same thing, and it was like mass murder. Like it can't be negligent. How could he not? We knew that it was for old people. It was dangerous, and he put them in the old age. So anyway, in my mind's connected because it's a state religion that's like this. Whenever there's a problem, there, in the sort of politics, you say, "Oh, we need to fix climate change or whatever." It's 0.4% of the atmosphere. It's not a problem. It has half the radiative factor, the radiative forcing of water vapor and clouds, which, by the way, have 100 times the volume. So it's like 1/200th of the effect. It's just nonsense, in my opinion. And I looked into it a little. Your viewers can maybe understand that I'm not such an unscientific person. I have a scientific background, and I'm an engineer and so on. Oh, but you're not a climate, guy. But there are climate guys that say it, and then they say, oh, well, they're nonsense. But I almost like, okay, first I'll just finish the thought, and then I'll tell you what I was thinking, and it's related to this, to Byron. Is okay. So when I realized for sure that the CO2 cult is nonsense. I mean, about 5 years ago or so, I already suspected a little. I thought into it. I looked into it. But 20 years ago, I was like the same, like, into left concepts. I went to UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara. I finished a degree in computer science. I aced my classes, some of them in physics and math, and some of them I failed, some of them I aced. I was not very consistent because sometimes I would never go to class, and sometimes I wouldn't go to class and still ace it. But sometimes I wouldn't go at all and not do well. Anyway, the point is, it's not like I don't know anything about science. Okay. Anyway, so over time, and then I realized, wait a minute, this is really just used as a political tool. And then the rest started crumbling, and because it's such a central mythology, everything depends on whenever it's a go-to problem. And once you just imagine, for your viewers that are not yet sold on this topic, is like, just imagine that it were it is used as a political tool of division, control, taxation, and controlling everybody's life, because you literally control how much energy a person uses. Like, you control everything they do, whether you can fly, whether you can drive, if you can eat meat or not. Which, by the way, I'm very for the concept of veganism. I think it's nice, like, or treat animals humanely and so on, even if you do eat them. But that aside, just control every aspect of your life, because energy requires every aspect of your life. And also it has geopolitical implications, because China has benefited because, and the worst authoritarian enemy in a sense to humanity that exists. They have, for not only the Uyghurs, which is a more popular one because they're Muslims, it becomes more of a major topic, which is an interesting thing, which I'll talk about in a second. And I'm all for helping the Uyghurs. But the Buddhists, the 1 to 3 million Buddhists, an international tribunal found Falun Gong, that one of the Chinese Communist Party leaders wanted to destroy. One of them said, no, don't destroy them. Well, use them, right? So then they're organ harvesting them, and an international tribunal found this. And in Israel, it's banned, the only country in the world. They banned, you cannot go from Israel to China to get a heart transplant or organ transplant, because one guy said to his doctor, oh, I have an appointment for a heart transplant. And he's like, what do you mean you have an appointment? You can't have an appointment 2 weeks ahead of time. Someone dies by accident or an unknown time, and then you have to go there within 12 hours or whatever, because it's on ice or whatever it is, right? So they have an appointment because they have he went 2 weeks ahead or a month ahead, because they schedule who they're going to kill. Oh, this kidney, we'll take this kidney with that heart and put in that, because this blood type is now required. Okay, International Tribunal found it on just the logic of it. If you have an appointment, you can just understand that's what they're doing. And so it's a big business. And in China, nothing is necessarily illegal unless it's against the party, unless it's a danger to the party. And so it's this sort of really powerful but scary, dangerous mix of authoritarianism with not free market enterprise, but it's like it's like, by the way, the word capitalism has bad connotations, so now people use free enterprise, which is people usually like. But here it's even like a corruption even of that. It's like you can do whatever you want as long as it's as long as you don't badmouth the Communist Party. Meanwhile, we're organ harvesting people, but Nike is basically whitewashing or whatever it is. Or sorry, in Apple they have the slave labor, and Nike has slave labor, and it's for China, by China, as they say now, and whitewashing a lot of stuff with as they say, wokeism. And I'm not against some of the. I understand what wokeism's trying to achieve, good things, but the methods are not good, and they're just don't work. And we've seen it over and over again. It's now they're doing divide and conquer with it's like dividing and conquering people with critical race theory. Critical theory is like neo-Marxism. It came in the 1950s to the U.S. through the Frankfurt School. From Germany, this conceptualization of neo-Marxism, and basically critical theory was critical class theory. It divides people by class, thereby destroying a society. So you divide and conquer, just let's say like the British used to do colonialism, they say. And so you weaken a society from within, because that's what people said, that the U.S. can never be conquered from without. So you have to destroy it from within. So because just in 2014, Don Lemon was saying, racism is judge people by the color of by the content of their character, like Martin Luther King, and Morgan Freeman was telling him it's all but dead racism now. I mean, this isn't 80 years ago or whatever, or 60 years ago, and we've passed those civil rights laws, and it's on its deathbed, but the media keeps keeping it up because it's used as a tool to divide and conquer, and and it doesn't help the Black community. We see all those. I mean, we see all the communities that have been, like Detroit has been 60 years under Democrat control, and so what happens? Like you have the death rate is up like 100% or 300% in Oakland or Detroit, and we see in Portland too.
Wait, I'm gonna pause here for a second.
Yeah. Pause.
We have to
really
like
going off topic.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like how can we bring this back onto the like?
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, now we see that back to Corona and lockdowns and Byron, and now we see that. The Wuhan lab theory leak was not crazy. Now they're admitting it wasn't crazy, and Dr. Fauci and the NIH paid for that. Gain of function. He says it's not, but I mean it says gain of function in his emails, and it's clearly gain of function because they were enhancing what the virus does. So forget the play of words. It's very lawyerly play on words. Okay, so it was a lab leak theory. And by the way, if your viewers, not to go too much on a tangent, but on October 18, 2019, before the outbreak, 1 month before the first cases that are suspected in November, there was an event called Event 201, World Economic Forum, which is literally a bunch of billionaires like Bill Gates and global billionaires talking about their agenda. I mean, literally global billionaires talking about their agenda and what they want to do. And they had this dress rehearsal for a novel coronavirus, not the novel corona, not this virus, but a novel coronavirus. And that one was supposed to come from Brazil, which they never seem to like because Bolsonaro, I don't know why. So they had a dress rehearsal like 1 month before the actual one. Now, maybe it was a coincidence. It seems a little weird that it's 1 month before the coronavirus. Or best case is that they knew about it, but they knew about it, but they didn't say that's also crime against humanity. And the case that I think is it was planned. Look, it was 1 month before, but how long did they plan it? They had to have chairs set up. They had to have a room. They had to tell all these billionaires what date it's going to come in. So it was planned for months before. And literally the day after, October 19, there was that event that now the Chinese are blaming because they say the Americans brought it through the Olympics and so on. It was literally one day before that. So anyway, so I think potentially there's something there. And now the lockdowns. So now you say, okay, so it was, and the lockdowns also served a political purpose because it ruined Trump's presidency and whether he was good or not. But it made the voting possibly a little bit different. And I know that there's a list of 10,000 in Michigan that you can actually check and plug into the government site and see that yes, they did die a long time ago. Anyhow, the point is the lockdowns were a political tool or used that way, and they didn't help. The science shows they didn't help. It didn't help in Florida. It didn't help in Norway and Sweden. They didn't have them. They didn't have the mask mandates either. But never mind that. I mean, I was respectful. I wear a mask when I go inside or whatever. And even if I think maybe it does help, maybe it doesn't because it's not a hospital setting. So the point is, the lockdowns were a killer. And everything that I wanted to talk about was like. And they were used as a political ploy, and people believe them, and they just look at the television and say, "Oh, we'll just lock down for a fucking year," and they'll shut down people's businesses and the drug overdoses from it, and people's livelihoods were destroyed. And my brother killed himself, and yes, he had other problems, but isolation is obviously a very big factor that Dr. K just mentioned on his finger, and then moved on to a bunch of other stuff. And maybe you should talk a little bit more about that, especially in light of the lockdowns and COVID. And yeah,
I think that I'm trying to pose this video in a way where I'm asking questions more than providing answers, but I'm gonna try and think of a way to at least put a line in there saying a line that sums up what you're saying, which is that and we already kind of said this before, but maybe there could be more focus on practical, and when I say practical, I don't mean meditation practical, I mean non-spiritual practical solutions to help. And I also think that Dr. K, if he's going to be doing these pseudo-therapy sessions and opening up Pandora's box, it's not enough probably to just say you should go find a therapist. You should probably have a system that helps people find a therapist. Maybe even a Healthy Gamer GG approved therapist or some shit You know what I mean? Like, it'd be
Yeah.
nice if like you talked to him and then you needed a therapist and he helped you get that therapist. It wasn't like you're just on
Yeah.
your own. Something like
That's
that.
right. That's right. But furthermore, I guess he did do therapy with Byron. So I mean, he offers to be a
Presumably,
therapist.
yeah. I mean, we don't really know what.
We don't know exactly
Fortunately,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. So let me summarize that way. So I think Dr. K should offer more practical. Well, let me start over. I think Dr. K may have good intentions. He also likes to grow his channel, and that can be profitable, but I'm not going to read into his mind because it can also help do AOE, like attack on effective against bipolar and so on. So I don't know, but I do. What it is clear that he drives people to an agenda, even if a not-profit one, which is meditation and Hinduism, ultimately, which he talks about. So it's kind of like, you can also have someone that's trying to get people to be born again Christians or something. I'm not Christian, but I'm saying it is what it is. It's like
Religiously motivated.
yes, and I think that he can say a lot of more practical things, like, for example, isolation's a big deal. Especially during lockdowns and COVID, which maybe were a little bit too much, and maybe in some places didn't. Just science at the end shows it didn't help. But regardless, you got to do what you got to do. If there's lockdowns, at least try to find. Then, especially now, try to find places where you can meet with people in person to deal with your depression. And maybe, for example, I like this group. If we're summarizing the DBSA, it's a nonprofit depression bipolar support alliance that you have local chapters. You meet with people, and or go to a therapist and go to a therapist perhaps. And I personally think that the meditation is helpful in some ways, I guess. But it's not for suicidal people. It's not like obviously it didn't work. The track record is Dr. K lost Byron.
I think that meditation is like helpful in a very like long term sort of. It's like you keep up a practice of it, and over many years, you will see benefits from it, and it'll help you with maybe like temporary dealing with like depression and anxiety and stuff like that. But it's not like an emergency tool, whatever.
Yeah, I actually think that it does help. I stated, I think, because I took a little bit from your lead in a sense, and I maybe got influenced as I think the meditation practice is practical, actually, but it's not panacea. It is a way to like stop your thinking right now. Like it's like a circuit breaker. Yep. He's going in this loops of I'm sorry this and this and sorry for what? Like you're sorry that you're wasting your own time. Like on the stream, and then that's like a cultural thing too. A little bit like over apologize. I mean, if you're wrong about something, sure. And that gets into some cultural issues too. And I don't want to. And this is the summary version, so I don't want to get too into that. But it, and it's sort of like he's thinking like over victimizing himself in a sense, like Byron is like, and so he has typical normal problems that he didn't feel confident in some cases, and you can work on those things. There's practical ways to work on those things, and to have a reset, like you don't need to feel sorry that you're wasting your own time because you're in a thought loop. Just here's a practical thing to stop it. Here's meditation. Okay, moving on. What about your isolation? Go to a group. Okay, you and so on. And yeah, that's it. I think he basically kept taking. And then he was telling him, and he was suggesting that without a spiritual, also with the reincarnation. So to summarize, he was saying that. Okay, he's a suicidal person. He's saying that there's reincarnation, and this person that you kind of look up to, this therapist with the power dynamic of a therapist, where again, it's not in a group setting like DBSA, which I prefer that in a sense. So he's like, you believe him like some kind of authority figure, which I understand that could be helpful sometimes, but he's saying he splits it from his therapy. But then again, it's also not he's also splitting there, saying it's not therapy, but it's obviously is therapy. I've been to therapy. That's exactly what therapy is. And he's asking questions, he's leading him to mental practices, digging into his, psychoanalyzing him, looking into his childhood, into his parents, into his how his parents reacted, how with his brother. It's obviously just like therapy, it is therapy. And just saying it's not, it's a normal conversation. That's why you can get away with it, because therapy is not like some special thing that it's specific to it, like some electrodes. Like, it's just a conversation you have with somebody. So that's how he can get away with that, very obviously. And he could have had therapy with him, and then he had this private sessions with him, with who knows what he was talking about there. So on stream, he was willing to say all these things, that reincarnation to a suicidal person seems irresponsible, very. And then talking about his dharma, which, okay, I can understand. I like the concept in where you get your life purpose. That I get. But dharma can also be hurtful. What I was saying with the Indian caste system, which put people as slaves basically, and says you can't get out of them because it's your dharma. But anyhow, he's saying about dharma for Byron is like, oh, your dharma is to make this game. After that, you can die. And what if you fail making the game because you have financial worries, or just it's not popular or whatever? Then you can die. Then you might as well die now, because the game's not going to happen. Maybe that happened because he had some. I think there were going to be investors and so on, but maybe not, and maybe he thought not. And oh well, the game's not going to work. I may as well kill myself and start over and re-roll. So I think, and he was suggesting certain things like that too, when he was saying, oh, the first step is in this meditation is you're like separating the mind from the consciousness, but there's further levels, like I guess when you in Hinduism, when you're you have a sort of spiritual view on it, and so then that's when you can taste the strawberry, and I don't know. So I think he could do more practical stuff.
I will always say that, like, when he's saying that stuff, like, he could just mean there's like further levels of meditative states like that. I agree. That's true in a sense, in a general. So I don't know. But I will say this: the fact that it's not clear what he meant is probably not a great thing.
Yeah, especially, and Byron was like really looking up to him, like, and who knows what he went off on his own. And he was saying, oh, when you go off on your own, you can work on it, and who knows what he may have thought about that. And exactly. Mm-hmm. I hope that was a pretty good summary. Should I have left anything out? No. Because I can say.
Well, I mean, in terms of the summary,
touch on a couple sense. What?
In terms of the summary, no, I don't think so. Also, keep in mind that, like, when I'm going to be using the clips, like, I'm not necessarily going to be using like the beginning of you talking all the way to the end. Like, I'm gonna pick and choose like the most relevant things, and I'm gonna also be like combining that with the stuff that Jenna and Jackie said that like supports, like, the things you said that support each other, to show that, like, oh look, like, it's not just Byron's brother who sees things this way, but it's also Byron's lifelong friends who, in a completely separate conversation, are coming to the same conclusions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Well, I wonder what they said about if it helps other people. But okay, look, I don't want to take too much time. I'm open to talk more because it's so important to me, and obviously for you, I'm so thankful that you're spending your time doing this. And I'm going to look into the other conversations perhaps today. And if you want, if there's time, because I thought maybe you would want to release this on the 2nd. I assumed you wanted to release it on the 2nd of July.
I don't know that I'll be done by then. Also, I don't even know if I want to do that, because I think that might be kind of like, I feel like disrespectful or something.
I don't think so, but I get what you're saying, and totally can wait for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not think that it was not disrespectful of me. I like what you're doing, but maybe to other people, I don't know. So I'll go look at some of the other stuff I could. Yeah, but that's just my opinion about what he's doing. About
I'm not
too. I'm less of an authority
about like the other people he's talked to in terms of like your perspective on it. I mean, while it is nice to have, I'm most concerned with his relationship
with Byron.
Because the way I'm sort of framing this is like, look what happened with Byron and Dr. K, and let's learn from this, because this shows that in a general sense, like, any issues that arose here can potentially arise in any of his conversations. You know what I mean? And this to me, like, this is the clear, like, granted I haven't seen all of his conversations, but this is the clear, like, worst, most negligent he's been that I've seen.
I mean, how could you get worse? No, I mean, maybe you could get worse negligence, but you can't get worse outcomes, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right. So, just thinking. Okay. Oh, while we're on here, do we want to look at some of the notes and if I didn't cover something?
Sure. Yeah. Let's just go through them one by one. I'll just read it to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. So the first thing you wrote was from the first talk. It says quantum misrepresentation, that it's consciousness that changes reality and not particle physics. In my opinion, it's maybe controversial, but probably not biggest
very
deal.
Relevant.
Yeah.
No, what you know why it is a little bit relevant is because it's almost like a quack in a way. Because I mean, what's a quack is like, it's like non-scientific, like a misrepresentation of science or something like that.
I think it's more like viewing things in a non-scientific way, basically.
Yeah, well, it's a misrepresentation. Yeah, because it's not that. I mean, it's observation that in order to observe something, it will change its outcome, whether it's going to be a particle or a wave hitting the wall. But it's not that your consciousness, it's in order to observe it, an electron or, a photon needs to be emitted or needs to be bounced off of that particle. And in the act of doing that, I think it collapses the wave theory, something like that. There's the interaction, like physically, you just cannot measure it without disturbing the system. So
right.
I don't recall exactly the I'm into this stuff, and I usually pretty good with it. I don't recall exactly like how the wave theory, the quantum wave collapses. I don't recall, but basically, yeah. So I think it's like when the photon is emitted or bounced off. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but the point is, it's not consciousness per se. It's in order to be conscious of it, right? Mm-hmm. It's in order to view it, to just for the photon to come. So using that as a sort of way to say, oh, reality is shaped by our consciousness in some, like we create consciousness as if we're in a virtual reality. We're just like what we think comes to life or whatever. Now, I'm all for positive thinking and envisioning what kind of outcome you want, and pro athletes do it, and I do it too. And you envision what you want because you need a plan first in order to climb the mountain. And so you want to have a plan, and positive thinking, and even concept of attraction in a sort of way, in soft way. Like I don't believe in it like in a metaphysical way necessarily, but I get it's good. But to say that literally physics is like shaped to your consciousness is like quackery or whatever, and it's just introducing like it's legitimizing from it's a good sort of opening to the rest of the sort of non-science, right? That's like misleading. It's going to like, well, let me tell you, quantum, the entire universe is actually according to how, Hinduism says and meditation stuff. And while there are certain things like science shows meditation can help and stuff like that, it's misrepresenting, right? And it's leading towards this whole other thing that can be supporting spiritual.
I definitely think that like Dr. K is coming from this perspective of like, science is not an absolute, it's just a system of measuring the relative or whatever. And so, like, I understand that viewpoint. Like, I think it can be useful to have that viewpoint.
But I think he went further than measuring the relative. I think.
No, like, I think he's kind of saying that, like what you're saying, the scientific explanation of quantum physics, he's saying, like, well, that's merely a scientific explanation, but in a more absolute sense, like, his viewpoint is that it's, like, it's consciousness that is the prime, whatever, influencer or whatever it is.
Well, I'll summarize in one sentence. The reason why I think that that's a misstatement is that it's not consciousness that changes whether the particle goes this way or that way. It's not that. It's that in order for you to perceive it, you would need to have received a photon from it, which is either emitted from it, which means the wave theory collapse, if I recall correctly, or you bounce the photon off it, which collapses. So you cause the physical thing in order to just see it. So it's not that you're conscious, it's not that you thought, it's not that you thought of something and you changed the way you see the misrepresentation in a sense.
Yeah, but I don't think that when he says consciousness changes controls whatever what he said, I don't think he means like you think something and it becomes true. I think it's like he's saying something like it's not about thoughts. It's hard to. I kind of get what he's saying. I feel like it's more like the experience. It's almost just like consciousness shapes our reality, in the sense that, like, I don't know if you've seen, Byron actually mentioned this, the case against reality in the first talk, and it's a neuroscientist, and he talks about, of course we're getting on a tangent here, but it's a neuroscientist, and he talks about how I don't know how he exactly went about doing this, but he created some sort of way of calculating the probability in which the way we perceive reality, how close that is to the actual thing. Because of course we have, like, there are naturally things beyond our perceptive abilities, and, you know, reality is not exactly as we perceive it. And according to this neuroscientist, it was a 0% chance that we're seeing anything even close to reality. So it's like what we experience is an entirely a fabrication of our being, that, like, the way we're designed as humans, such that we will survive, you know, like the way we interpret a train coming at us, so we get out the way, like, even though apparently in reality it's like a completely different thing happening. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I get what you're saying, but I'm gonna throw back at you. It definitely was open to miscommunication.
Yeah.
If you're not sure exactly what he meant, and that is an interesting concept. But yet again, I'm able to hold this phone and I'm able to pick it up, and other people can tell me it's a meter off the ground, and hey, they're going to measure it, and I'm going to say it's between a meter and 2 meters, or 3 and 80 feet off the ground, and lo and behold, we're all going to, like, independently corroborate that, or like say that, yeah, that's true. I measured it and it came out that way. So while on the quantum physical level, yeah, that's all true. You don't know where the particle is and so on, but yet we're able to walk across a bridge. We're able to. So and so I get, maybe that's some interesting thing, but I think that maybe that's misleading book too. Or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know that book, but you see the problem with that. I'm still holding this glass, and it's still, people can, and things still work as we would think they would. So it's that on a quantum level, it's true that electrons can bounce over wires, and that's why computers are going to soon have. Potentially, you need to have a new kind of computation system, because the electrons are getting so few that quantum effects can affect can affect them. But that's not to say that when you have trillions of particles, one particle, like there's trillions or many more particles, let's say, in this glass, and one of them can just jump and disappear and be somewhere else on the other side of the universe with some probability that decays. The farther it is, the more the unlikely it is. But that's not to say that trillions of particles are going to just disappear and go somewhere else.
Right.
In theory, it can happen. We just don't often see it. In theory, you can walk through the door, like you try a gazillion times, and one of those times you'll just walk through the door, because of the probability. Like in some universe it happened, but it doesn't. Anyway, right. It's a long shot from saying, and what he was, if you look at it, I think it is suggesting that it's like your mind is, because what does it mean? What did he mean then? Because he said the particle, he said conscious, it's like consciousness.
Shapes our reality.
Okay, because the particle is going on one hand, it's going through the slit as a particle, and it shows up as a dot. In the other hand, it shows up as an interference, depending on whether you observed it or not. i.e., you have to understand what observed means. Observed means the photon was emitted or was bounced. I don't recall, but something like that. And then the quantum wave theory collapsed, because when the photon's emitted, it needs a certain excitation state, and in entering that excitation state, then like the probability wave collapses to a particle, to a point, something like that. So then you are able to observe it because a photon comes to your eyes, right? But you're just not able to observe it. It's not that you're it's not like your consciousness. Well, what else can he mean? Because it's not what is that your consciousness is affected, that there was a part that the light came. Okay, but that's normal. That's normal life. Light is bouncing off this and coming into my eye. So what can he possibly mean? If you look into it, if you think about it, it's sort of like that. It's definitely suggestive of, it's sort of new age spirituality. Like, and I'm not against positive thinking, and I use it myself, and envisioning, and even believe it in some vague way. But he's saying it's sort of like almost as a science, as a scientist, he's saying, like, he's suggesting, and it's not clear at least, that your consciousness can create reality or something like that. It's sort of, it seems that way a little. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
don't know. It's too complicated to truly get
Yeah,
into. I do think that like
I need to read it. I need to look at it again. Also,
yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it in the sense of like take what that neuroscientist said about like okay, we have like our own version of reality that human brain
hmm
constructs or whatever, and like from his perspective, from Dr. K's perspective, maybe he's saying like that reality on its like on the highest level is just constructed by your being like the fact that you are a conscious being and like your experience of consciousness is the construction of that reality. Maybe I don't know. I feel like we shouldn't dwell on it too much because it's complicated and spiritual and would probably require us both to do a lot more learning on what he means to get an
yeah, I don't
idea.
even.
Yeah.
I think I'm familiar with that. Like, probably I've even read a summary of that book or something like that, or I just don't recall. I can understand what you're saying. Our perception of reality is way off. Like, our memories are way off. We remember
Mhm.
things not as they were. Our eyes can be fooled in lots of different ways, as we see with various visual tricks, and then on quantum level. So there's all kinds of things, and I get all that, but I also get that at the end of the day, you can like do independent observations of things and people will come to the same conclusions, and yet if you walk through something you'll still hit a wall. And
Yeah, I would say like that it's like both at the same time.
maybe
It's like
okay,
everything about science and all the relative stuff about we can measure is true, and then perhaps in a more absolute sense, like consciousness is the construction of our reality. And I feel like what Dr. K is getting to at is all much more in the direction of like enlightenment and oneness. And it's like, oh well, everything is like a fabrication, including yourself. And so like there is no separation between you and anything else because you're all just this one fabrication.
and I sort of agree with that in some way, but as a sort of unrelated interesting thing, like
Yeah.
you like maybe but well, it's just a interesting thing about this, I guess. We have our own ego, like I feel like I'm in myself, but maybe it's like everyone assumes that other people have the same experience, and it's like, what is this experience? It's actually like in computer science called like also a problem. It's a very deep philosophical thing, and in philosophy, and one philosopher that I never agreed with, but now I'm like kind of one guy, a friend of mine helped me like, well, maybe it makes sense. He said there is no this other experience like this nyan. He said, as Dr. K called it, this experience of so there's consciousness and the sort of I forget like the hard part of consciousness, but I don't know if that's how what Byron meant, but it's like the experience, basically experience. So you can have a computer that acts just like maybe you can have an AI that acts just and thinks just like a person and so on, and even and all the stuff in it. But is he experiencing it? And
You
there was a
only
philosopher
know
like,
your own experience, ultimately.
yeah, that's true. Right. And there's this philosopher I think I liked at the time that called it qualma. You can see which philosopher at the time. I think it was in college. I think it was like 20 years ago. And I had read about it and oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, qualma, that's what it is. He thought it was like an extra property of matter itself, that just like there's mass charge on particles, but there's also, just like now they're discovering, there's a spin in an extra dimension. That's literally science, that particles have an additional spin, and that's what creates quantum effects. It just don't see it. It's an extra dimension. And dimension is not a weird word. Dimension is
No.
like 1, 2, 3. In math, you can add another dimension. You have a square, you have a cube, and then you can add another dimension that's a
Fourth
hypercube.
dimension. Yeah.
Simple. Another dimension is color. You can add a color to it. That's another dimension. It's just a number line, basically,
Yeah.
that you add to describe something.
String
So
theory.
yeah, and then anyway, so this guy David, I forget his name, Chalmer, I don't know, Chalmer. Anyway, he talked about qualma. It was like this experience that matter itself has. So I suppose he thinks maybe even the glass has consciousness. Maybe, I don't know, that matter itself, or maybe when it's arranged in a certain way, then it creates, just like, oh, he had a nice example. Electron by itself doesn't emit light, but if you wave it really fast in the electromagnetic fluctuation, then it creates a electromagnetic field, and that emits a photon. And so it's the movement, it's the organizational structure, and so on, that makes this qualma, this additional property in matter, turn into light that is consciousness. Maybe I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's like, so I'm just saying we don't know where the universe started. It doesn't make sense either way. Big Bang. So was there anything before? If there's nothing before it, it doesn't make sense. And if it never had to start, it doesn't make sense. If it was always it breaks causality, because you don't know if it didn't have a beginning, it's broke. It doesn't make sense. And if it went on forever, it doesn't make sense. And the same thing, by the way, for discrete versus continuous space. Is there a space jump between space? Like that doesn't make sense to us. What, there's nothing in between? It's like a simulation and a computer then, or
there's
whatever.
No way for us to fathom nothingness in its like nothing, like actual nothingness, like outside of the universe nothingness.
Yeah, or if there's nothingness, why did something happen? It breaks causality, which is our most fundamental like reasoning mode. And so I'm all for like spiritual concepts and stuff, and I've more, but I just don't think it was useful for a suicidal person to say that there's reincarnation.
Yeah, definitely agree.
And so this started the path is like, oh, your consciousness. And I even think that might be true, that actually in quantum physics now there's a concept that in M theory that it's all one part. It's not actually the reason why. This is kind of cute. We're already on a tangent. Let's not pretend we're not. It's fine. I'll just say it. On an electron, because we're already going. So an electron, all the electrons look exactly the same. They have like the same exact weight. So they say it's not just that they look identical, it's that they are identical. That the probability wave is just like in a certain way, that it's all one wave. And I think that's literally string theory and membrane theory, M theory, or whatever it stands for. It doesn't really have a name necessarily, but it just adds another dimension that unites, like instead of 11 dimensions, 12, if I recall, or 17 now, I don't know. Anyway, it's all one probability wave, and it's like a pond. It's like a ripple. It's like the universe is a pond, and everything is just ripples in it.
Yep.
And so in that sense, our consciousness is like a ripple in the space-time, quantum, so on. Sounds cool. What does it mean exactly? It's a little weird, but you return. But then in death, go on. Last thing, in death, you sort of maybe return to this, as Hindus think is, and maybe Buddhists is nirvana, and then you end the cycle of birth and rebirth, and then you return to like not the Brahma, but one of those.
Yeah, there's different names for it all. I personally, it's like I'm also Jewish. Not really religious or anything, but I do really like that sort of idea that like it's all just an ocean, and this experience of self is just like a wave in that ocean, but really it's like a wave that forgot it was the ocean or something. Or whatever.
Like I'm not. One good thing I'll take from this Hindu guy that I listened to. God has a bad name now. People are always like excusing themselves. I did, you did, and so. And it's true. I'm not very religious, but people always say, "Oh, the universe made me do." The universe will lead me. And this one Hindu guy, it's actually funny. He said, "You mean that Saturn and Jupiter met up in Uranus and decided what's going to happen for your life?" So people are scared to say the word God, which just means like. Well, I can understand, because they attach all kinds of mythologies to it and stories that are like, okay, well, obviously this is man-made or something like that. Maybe it's revealed, maybe it's not. But the basic concept in Judaism is kind of cool because it's so abstract, minus like all the other stuff that's sort of added, but it tries to stay abstract in the sense that, you're not supposed to draw the idols and so on, and just the basic 10 commandments, and it's a God is one.
And so exactly. Ever present.
God is one, like the one ripple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I actually find it really cool how Judaism has a lot in common with these Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism and stuff, especially like the Kabbalah stuff. I gotta
learn more into that.
Yeah, I learned a little bit about it when I did Birthright back in 2013.
Oh, it's cool.
But I just find it really cool. I found out this year that in Kabbalah, like Jewish spiritual people have their own form of enlightenment, like the same way that Buddhists have enlightenment, which I thought I was like blown away when I learned that, because I was like, wow, like what are the fucking odds that like they're like different parts of the world, but they both sort of achieved this sort of idea of enlightenment and non-duality.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you achieve the Hebrew enlightenment? Because in Buddhism, it's kind of simple in a sense, because they say there's another level, but it's kind of like, sounds like sometimes, are you sure? Because I already was at peace, and what do you mean? But
I don't know the methods that Judaism has. I would imagine it's not too dissimilar. I know like the Buddhist way, because I'm into meditation and stuff, and like really it's it's really about the realization of no self ultimately, because I think all of the forms of enlightenment that different religions have, it's always about non-duality, duality being this idea that like there's a me and there's an everything else. So it's all about like intuitive understanding of oneness. So the Buddhist way is like it is mostly through a form of meditation called vipassana, which is like you are concentrating on a sensation in your body to like the quantum level of concentration for you to see that it's like impossible to actually pinpoint anything, because the further you go, the more there's just like there is like a certain nothingness when you try and like identify anything. Yeah,
Yeah, I got you.
this idea that we are just a bunch of sensations that are like taking credit for this, like we're really just a bunch of sensations that are occurring one way or another, and this idea of self is just like certain sensations that we're attributing to the idea of self, but in reality they're just sensations, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's weird how we sort of, seem like we have this experience overall of things. I think it was David Chalmer, I want to say, yeah, with the whatever it is, yeah, this property of matter. All right, but yeah, that's interesting. But let's try. I'll try to be quicker on the second one.
Yeah. So like the next one you have, I don't know if we need to go into each single one of these, because this one just says first Everland moment, which I'm assuming just means like this is when he told Byron that like Everland is his dharma, right? It's about 35 minutes in.
Yeah. What did I mean? Maybe. Well, usually I would highlight a place where Byron gets emotional. Oh, he told him that Byron started crying. He told him that he's thinking back to his childhood kind of stuff. That
yeah,
and the
that he's
first
like
time
doing
Byron
it to save to help him, like people who are going through what he did when he was a kid, right?
Yeah, or sort of for him, like, because it's like him. And then he went one step further. It's you're actually trying to help yourself as a kid, but it's now it's new kids, of course.
Right. You say after that, or do you want to go?
No, that's it. And then there's a second point, right?
Unless the next thing you say was he's suggesting to him that he felt abandoned.
Oh yeah. So well, I think that's an important point. And by the way, I remember when I came home and my older brother died, Guy, and I saw the ambulances there. It was a really powerful moment. Byron said that, and I kind of forgot that he said that. That it was powerful for him. Right here, where I'm in Byron's room right now, for the viewers that don't know, just by the way, and here's like his secret of mana back here, and he would stream from here if you recognize that there's the table. I just couldn't set it up very easily. It just has his posters here. And some of them are. It used to be my room actually before I went to college, and then his shirts and stuff you could see. Sorry, a little tangent, but anyway, we were in here enough for it. So what was I saying? I was saying
he felt abandoned. He's suggesting to him he felt abandoned.
Yeah. So we came back, and it was just outside here, down in the street, and the ambulance was there, and Byron was in the car with me and with another friend. A friend of mine was visiting from Israel, and I sort of wasn't paying as much attention as I wanted to because of that. But probably wouldn't have changed anything, but with my brother and with my older brother. And then I saw the ambulance, and I right away knew what happened, and I wrote a song. Oh, it's in this drawer. Like, I have cassettes, and I've been wanting to digitize them before they're, like, I have all these cassettes in here. I want to digitize them before they don't work anymore. It was like 25 years ago. And I wrote a really powerful song, I guess. I don't share it with many people, but one of my friends says, oh my God, it's like the most beautiful, powerful song. It's because of that moment, I guess for Byron too, but he didn't really know what was happening. But I sort of knew somehow the moment I saw the ambulance. And then the guy, I just remember the talk. I don't know. I remember one line in that. Maybe the ambulance guys were having some kind of just a normal joke, like between themselves, not a related, even not a joke, but like something made someone just smirk or giggle, or I don't know. And I was like, the ambulance man laughed at me or something like that. I didn't mean he actually laughed at me. I mean, it was just, I remember that people could be, and that actually reminds me of my dad's book when he's saying people are going about their business, their life. That's what I meant. They're going about their business, their life, still laughing. He was trying to be serious, but just by chance, by something made him laugh. I don't know. Anyway, but otherwise he was fine. He didn't do it in my face. I just saw him from afar, I think. Anyway, and he came up to the car and he was starting to say what happened with Guy, and then I just turned the car around, and I didn't want to be there at the moment with Byron and stuff, so I just didn't want him to be there. So I turned around, we went to the mall, and you're like walking the mall. Imagine that's a real experience. You're like, your brother just died and your little brother's there, and I like have to spend some time with him. And I remember the song came on in the car. It was this like really old Jaguar. It was like broken down classic. It was like a 1976 or something like that. Barely worked. It was all like fumy and smelly. But anyway, and the song came up, gasoline fumes. I should have fixed it, but it was like classic. Anyway, the song came up, and I always remember it. It was like, this one goes out for the one I love. This one goes out for the one I've left behind. That song from REM. So it's a pretty powerful moment for me. And anyway, I came back and I wrote that song. I never showed it to Byron. I'm sad about that, but yeah, I'm sad about a lot of things that I didn't get to do with Byron. Anyway, abandonment. So, well, my brother disappeared. He basically abandoned us. I mean, my older brother, it wasn't his fault. Of course, he was in such pain, but he did abandon us. And my dad he was in such pain that he sort of wasn't around either, because I don't know. Look, whether my older brother was his favorite or wasn't his favorite, it could be very hard on a parent to lose your first son or any son. And so my dad wasn't around. And then now Barnes, from his perspective, he sort of miscolors some things, but he is true. Probably he's right in a certain sense. I was in my room a lot. And I was, because I heard that he said, "Oh, my brother Gary was always in his room." I was in my room a lot, and I never analyzed that much. And I didn't think like, well, where's Byron so much? Because he was also I was in my room. I was in high school. Byron was 10 years younger than me, and maybe he was playing like video games downstairs. He would play a lot of video games. I don't know. I did play with him also, but I guess I could have played with him more, of course. And I did go out of my way to try to play with him. So, my older brother sort of, disappeared, abandoned, whatever, died. My dad, and then maybe me in some sense. And Byron wasn't around for me in a sense either. He was just always playing his video game. I could barely talk to the guy. And he was like, you would get mad at when he was 14. It was really hard to talk to you. He'd yell at you if you're like interrupting him playing Asheron's Call or whatever for years and years and years. But then he came to college with me, and I should have dragged him out more to that's why I feel bad
for what it's worth, I don't think that Dr. K was suggesting that you were the reason he felt abandoned. My interpretation, and I think that this is how he might have even clarified this way, but it kind of seemed to me like he was saying the family as it was when Guy was still alive changed, and losing that was like this where the sense of abandonment came from, because it was like, because now that's not there anymore. Different.
That's right, because he said he remembers just before my brother died, maybe us all on the couch and smiling and laughing, and then it was a different situation for years, because my dad was just like totally destroyed and he couldn't function. And so nothing I could have changed would have changed that. And I sort of had it to be the strong one, I guess, for the family in a way. I mean, my mom was around. She also had her episodes with manic depression too. And I was okay. I wasn't like maybe a dad to Byron, but my dad was a little bit absent too, because he just wasn't able to function. And, so Byron was a little bit abandoned in that sense too, but more, like you said, the overall picture of the great family otherwise was destroyed, and that people were laughing before, and everything could be happy, and there wasn't any disaster, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
any hole, any missing people. Absolutely, I got that too. But I was just going off on my own thing a little. But anyway, I wish I would have spent more time. As everyone wishes more thing, but and I wanted to come, but I didn't want him to feel like his apartment like was in Austin. It was really pricey, and I didn't want to come and not pay him rent or something like that. I was in Bali at the time, and like I did very well in crypto at one point, but then I like lost basically millions of dollars. So I gained millions and then lost millions. It was pretty hard on me too. Like in 2018, because I diversified because the company stuff, and because I raised like millions of dollars, it would have been more, but then I diversified it to be like more responsible with it. But
Right.
then when I fell, that's the worst thing you can do, because you can keep it all in a dollar in the exchange. I didn't know what to do with it, put an exchange in the dollar and just keep it there because it can't go to the bank right away, or at least keep it all in Bitcoin. But then even if I would have kept it on Ethereum, it also went down, but it went down even more because it's more diversified in other coins. Anyway, and then I didn't have any other income at the time, so I was spending that. And so then on paper, it's like you lost millions of dollars. Anyway, I ended up still being able. I still did what I needed to do, and still made CoTrader do fine and build everything. But it was hard because it was like 2018 January when the fall started happening. So I was like on top of the world 1 second, and then anyway, I don't. It's a little bit different, but just to give a little context of where I was coming from. And anyway, I was like in Bali, and I was still enjoying though a little bit, but just on the not super expensive side. I was like in Bali, going to volcanoes and stuff, like riding around a little scooter, going to beaches. So I lived a nice life and everything, just not like with huge amounts of money. And Byron would spend like, I don't know, $10,000 a month on his rent, right? And so I didn't want to land at his place and not, and I'll pay. I didn't think I would have been happy to split it, but I didn't want to feel like I'm taking advantage of him or something like that. But now I realize that's people were that's what he was inviting people to come live. And I asked, and I would have paid him something so that he would have felt that it wasn't taking advantage. I just wanted to be with him and just help him. But I didn't also realize like how deep this stuff was, because it looked like he was doing fine with his sessions with Dr. K, and I wasn't following all his streams. Anyway, I just want to give a little context of what happened from my point of view. And then I talked to my mom, and she was like, no, it's an expensive place. He wants someone to rent it. And she didn't understand. Like she thought he wants to get someone to rent it, but he didn't have a concern about that. He was spending like tens of thousands of dollars a month, like in the game development, not he, but the company, and so on. So it was like a drop in the bucket, this $5,000. He had like an additional floor or something that he wanted people to come stay at. I think it was 5K, another apartment, not a floor maybe. And so, yeah, that's what it was. And then my mom thought that like he's trying to get it rented, but no, he just wanted someone to come there. I was also locked down, so I couldn't fly very easily. And I was like worried, maybe not. Like, I didn't want to come to LA. I wasn't worried for myself. I could, worst case, I got it. I'm young enough. I wouldn't have gotten hurt.
Yeah.
So I could have come to Austin. Anyway, I wanted to talk about that, but about the abandonment, I don't know. But I think for him, from his perspective, from Byron's perspective, you understand, I think, what it meant. But I liked it. I mean, I like that you said that it wasn't the abandonment for me, but I do feel that that our family, that I like he said at one point, Byron said, because then we would fight sometimes, but not too much, just sometimes. But we also had nice moments together, just to be together, just to eat. Like he said, oh, just order Chinese food. That was the example he gave. Just to be with somebody, and just because I didn't mind, I would have stayed with him for any amount of time. Now you can't be with someone like that forever, I guess. But in a way, I could have easily hung out with him for. I mean, we used to live together for
Years. Yeah.
Because later on in Marina Del Rey, I had him come live with me in California in the beach town. So it was even a studio apartment. We had to share the bed over there, for a little while. Then we moved up to a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, I think. I don't remember. But so the point is, I felt bad that I wasn't there more, but I was confused that if he needs me to be there, or he wants to rent it or not. Anyway, it's in the past now, but that's talks about abandonment enough, I think.
For what it's worth,
Know.
I think that everything that you did was very normal, and how most people in your situation would probably have acted. I don't think that you did anything like blatantly wrong. obviously hindsight, 2020, things look different. Like, well, I wish I did this, I wish I did that, but like you didn't have a way to know that at the time. You did what made sense at the time.
Yeah.
You acted with good intention at the time. You know what I mean? So that's what counts in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, let's move on, I guess.
Let's see. Here you mention he drew you in with some of his stuff about talking about ego. And then he says, next thing you say is, I feel like it's got to be us now. Here, Dr. K is telling him why Everlyn has to be done by you.
Well, I mean, just as a personal note, I guess he's saying, like, I mean, I do connect with what somebody's saying with Dharma. Well, what's my Dharma then? I mean, with what happened to me with both my brothers and Byron leaving Everland in the state it is. I don't want to be too involved in it, but I would like to see it come to light. And I would like to help people with bipolar and suicide and mental health issues. And I mean, it would be almost strange for me not to. And so I say it's up to us now to get this thing, me also, in a sense, like everyone's actions are one their own, to try to do well for people. That's it. Yeah. So it was more personal note.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I'm going to try and go like here. I can already infer what you're saying from this. Dr. K on his ambitions to be the next Deepak Chopra. I've assumed that you pointed this out because you wanted to show that he's driven by more than just helping people.
Yeah. Now you can say that, oh, well, Deepak Chopra helps more people. I don't know. Some people think that he's a little bit weird, or like some of the stuff sounds like a quack a little bit. Like it's not scientific, like the same quantum stuff maybe, or other things like that. But it could be good, it could be bad. Okay, we can move on, I think.
The next few messages are about you can die, but not until you've done what you need to do for that 5-year-old, or you'll just have to come back and fix that problem later, then goes into reincarnation.
Oh, that's terrible. I mean, wow, you have to fix it later. So it shows, oh, wow, I can't fix it now. I'll just kill myself. And with reincarnation, I'll then be able, if I am not able to do Everland now or whatever, or it's just not working for me, I'll just try again and again. I'll just try again.
Mm-hmm.
So that obviously, that's just horrible.
Yeah, I agree. It was so fucking careless, like, to say something like that. That one just, I don't know. I can't get over how much fun that one pisses me off.
Yeah.
He downplays, sure, you might have a family history and biological predisposition, before saying he can work it out on his own with meditation. And that was in regards to BPD.
Yeah, I think I'm saying that he's downplaying. Not only does he have depression, but he has a history of suicide in his family, and and so on, manic depression, and a couple of people in my family. And then, but meditation will fix it all, and don't worry. And I like the meditation, and it's interesting because you're even into meditation, but you're still saying it's not this
appropriate.
You can't. It's not appropriate in this case to try to pretend it's gonna. And we saw the results. So, yeah. Okay, we can continue. Yeah.
Let's see. So far, this is just a point on isolation, but we've already talked about that. Trying to find one that isn't related to something we've already talked about. You point out that he says there's a chance I'll lose my job if colleagues find out.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he was saying that in regards to? Seems to be from the third conversation.
I think the entire format. I think he was saying just if I'm doing any of this, there's a chance that I'll lose my job just for doing this, like therapy.
Okay, so like the pseudotherapy sessions in general.
Yeah.
Interesting that he acknowledges that he could lose his job over that.
Right. Because it's suggesting that, why? Because it's so much, because it's a person talking to you just like a therapist would, except he's saying it's not therapy.
Exactly, yeah. I called some psychiatrists actually just before the weekend to see what they would say about, I sort of vaguely described to them what was going on and asked them, like, is that therapy? What is therapy? And the message that I more or less got was that there is no like there is no hard definition on what is or isn't therapy, because anything can be therapy. And so anyone can get away with the claim that saying something isn't therapy, and that there is no real governing body. Like, there's the APA, American Psychiatric Association, but they actually have no power in whether or not you practice. They're just like they're a guild essentially, and you can be like cast out of the guild, but that has no effect on your ability to practice, which I thought was pretty weird. That it's like such a broken system like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it kind of makes sense. So you're saying there's no hard line of what therapy is or not,
Yeah.
right? I mean, because it's a conversation, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to make you walk in this particular way, right? So
Exactly.
it kind of makes sense that you can't define it exactly. Yeah, okay. It becomes a little bit of a weird science then. What kind of science is it? I don't know. Yeah, but that's a more general critique of psychology, and I don't mean to be, because I think it can help. Actually, maybe that's an important point to make. Like, the therapist just wants you to keep coming. In some sense, he's financially incentivized to make you keep coming. That's why I also like this. I keep saying it, but the DBSA, it's a nonprofit and it's a groups therapy, and you have group support, and you're not dependent on this power dynamic. And the guy isn't incentivized to keep you coming back. He wants you to feel good, but then again, you're never cured, right? You always want to come back. Yeah. Anyway.
Let's see what's next. Dr. K tries to connect Byron's issue of not liking uncertainty in new relationships, and noticing the point inhale turns to exhale. I'm not sure he manages to do this. I'd rather he explained a sense of emotion. It makes sense as an emotional investment into new people on hoping a relationship will work out, and then suggest something more practical, like putting yourself in new situations, like you're saying just now, putting yourself in new situations where you meet people so you don't have to worry as much, and removing your expectations that you need to be any sort of way and you need to explain yourself, because you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just practical stuff like how to just be more social and not get into thought loops, or if you do, just realize you're just wasting your time. You don't have to be sorry. You're just, those are not important thoughts. You can just let them go.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you even mentioned here, this is kind of related. I like you say you like that Dr. K tried to cultivate his sense of detachment from outcome to be content and fine, which I totally agree with.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't think I actually saw this one. What is this last clip? This is not even one of the conversations. This is
the afterword of how what he said. Is that the very last one, or at the very last one?
The very last one, yeah.
Yeah, so
I didn't even read this actually. You can go on about it.
I should read it?
No. I'm saying I didn't even read that one yet.
Can you read it? Because I don't.
So it says, all right, I watched them all now and have had time to figure out my position on it. And what can be a positive message and direction for him to incorporate. As Kay also points out in isolation is a contribution. He doesn't offer anything concrete to help with isolation. He just says something about quantum physics and that in life we are given the tools we need. So this is basically, it sounds like here you're more or less saying, and you even mentioned DBSA at the end here, that you're kind of, this goes back to the practicality thing and the things like DBSA, that you're kind of saying you wish for him to point people in that direction.
Yeah, and I want to be like I want to look more into DBSA. I sound like such an evangelist or whatever it's called for it now, and it's fine because it's it's a nonprofit. I'm just trying to be helpful here or whatever, but because I think it'll be, I wanted to have like a practical direction for people, and I feel like maybe I should look more into DBSA, but that's like the best thing that I've seen so far. It makes sense to me, and my friend said that it's helpful, and so I want to be a concrete thing. I want them to be able to raise the 100K funding for what they're doing, and I want Dr. K, and I'm sure Dr. K can help with something like that. And I'm not so much in the community. If I post it, I would like Dr. K to help with that,
right?
With raising the 100K, and I would like Dr. K to point people in their direction in these kinds of cases. That's all. So I like Dr. K. I think he did in a lot of ways. I think he did He means well, probably, and he, everyone wants to succeed in life, and maybe he's also driven by profit. So are a lot of people. Yet the fact is, the fact of the matter is, his outcome
Yeah.
wasn't good with Byron.
Right.
To understate it, and he's downplays isolation because he mentioned it on a finger and then didn't even talk about it, and talked about for minutes and minutes about other things in that same clip, like the meditation and so on, or other things, spiritual stuff. And I just want to be more practical. I want him to send him to the DBSA. I want him to possibly a therapist, although I'm leaning more to the DBSA because I like the group therapy concept and nonprofit concept of it. That's it. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah.
I concrete steps I'd like him to do, and I think he's a good guy, and probably, and he seems nice. Seems like he wants to help people. I'm sure probably it is. That's why he got into it. I assume to help people, and I think that's how he can help people. So I think he should do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And who knows? Maybe like with this video, I imagine that this video is going to catch his attention because no one's really criticizing him. So, hopefully this video will, like, maybe he'll hear this and be interested in implementing like stuff like the DBSA, group therapy, more practical solutions.
Maybe should I say, because I don't want to be too critical, and I sound like I was probably
I don't think
critical.
you sound too critical because you've been saying things like you think that he has good intentions, that he's probably getting into it to help people.
Yeah, and by the way, I try to be really honest and direct. So because to someone it might sound like I was being critical, because I'm not saying for sure he's helping people, because I don't know that.
Exactly,
I think so. Dean probably, probably he wants to help people.
Exactly.
And I'm trying to be like honest. So I don't know. I can't read into his mind. But hey, he's his job is to help people, and this is how he can help people.
Exactly.
And I think some of the stuff helped me with the meditation. I liked it. I just don't think it helped my brother necessarily because of the result. Maybe it didn't. I mean, maybe it did. I don't know. Maybe it would have happened either way. Could be. Happens. But okay, he didn't save him. But I'm not putting on him. I also didn't save him. A lot of things didn't save him, but yeah. So let's try this other direction. I'd like him to point people there.
I agree. And for anyone listening, I think it's worth mentioning that, like, you could be in support of someone and like them while still being critical of them, and that if anything, that is like kind of the whole message of this video is like, I like Dr. K. I think he's really good, but if we're never going to be critical of him, look at the things we're risking. No?
Yeah, and you can't put people too much on a pedestal because it creates like a sort of spiritual authority figures out of them. They can do no wrong, and
Exactly.
It's bad for the person themselves. Even, by the way, there's an old part in like English law, I think it was, that like if your garden or something has like gold on it or whatever, and there's a bunch of poverty outside, it's your responsibility. It's if they come and like steal it from you or do some harm, it's almost your fault in some sense, because you're like you're like dangling something that's too, you're dangling bad behavior, and you're incentivizing it so much that it's like really negligent, and you could even be at fault. And I think when you put people in positions of power, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and so on. And when you put people on too much of a pedestal, it can hurt them and hurt everyone that they interact with and beyond, perhaps. So it's just like good to just be realistic, and he's a good guy, I think, and he wants to do well, like most people I know, and let's just improve on what we have here and try to do better for other people.
Yeah, well said, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll watch anyhow. I don't think it's as relevant though, and I think you're like, leave me alone, man. It's been like 20 hours. It was a fun convo, but I'm sure that
it was a good conversation. I'm just personally sleepy, and I got terrible sleep last night, so No,
I understand, man. You're probably hungry and sleepy. It's been like, I don't know, 3 hours.
It's been about 2.5 hours, roughly. It's
all right,
a long
bro.
one.
I know I can be a little long-winded sometimes too. All right, bro. So it's great talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you again.
Man, thank you for doing the second conversation with me.
No problem, man. Yeah, this is my brother, but I really appreciate that you're helping.
And
All right.
all the best to you and your family.
Thank you very much. And my parents are really appreciate it too. So thanks a
Happy
lot.
to hear that.
And
Take care.
talk to you. Yeah.